Suburbia podcast, and I'm sitting here with Chris Alberini.
Hey, how you doing? Glad to be here.
What's going on, Chris? If you guys remember from my buck, Chris came and helped me get the buck out, so I appreciate that. I still got your cooler back here, by the way. Too.
Oh, do you?
I gotta give that
I forgot
back
about it. You could add a free cooler.
Yeah, well, it's back there, and you got a deer you could have used and put in there, right? Tell us about that's a good way to start out. You got a nice 8-pointer this year. Why don't we tell that story a little bit?
Yeah. So actually, I was I had some good bucks on camera that were really inconsistent, and just was like made the decision that I'm just going to start going out and not wait to see any consistency, and went out in the morning. One of my spots that I've been hunting for, I don't know, probably 15 years now, that's always produced well, but had like nothing good on it this year. Hunted the morning, had a couple does come by early, and then as one left, I see movement, and coming out in front of me, I see a buck hitting a scrape probably like 80 yards. And from the way it was like kind of through a pine tree, it looked like it had no antlers. So I was like, oh, it's like a little buck, like a year and a half old. So hung my bow up, and it's coming in, and as it's coming through the brush, I actually took my phone out. I think I sent you the video.
Yeah.
Took my phone out and started videotaping as it came through the brush. And as it came out, I'm like, whew, that's a wide 8-pointer.
That looks better on camera.
And he was kind of spindly. Like, he didn't have a lot of mass to him, but he was wide, and I didn't have anything good, or better on camera there. So I was like, time to put my phone in.
You hadn't got out much at all to hunt this year.
No, I think that was my second or third sit, just dealing with, I have 4 kids and work. And, but yeah, I decided to put that camera away, and he walked in, and I actually ended up at he came to 15 yards. I ended up spining him. I had to put another shot in him, but I was like, wow. I got down. I was like really, really pleasantly surprised at the deer it was, not knowing, that he was around. And he actually had, so I think technically he's with a little nub off of his brow tine. He's a 9-pointer, but he actually was his main brow tine on the other side was broke off. What you can see for a brow tine is actually another kicker. So we had split G1s on both sides.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you end up weighing him?
No, he's still in the cooler. So like you said about this cooler, I'm lucky enough that, I've been cutting deer with my neighbor who was a lifelong butcher, or meat, if you call him a butcher, he gets mad. Meat cutter. But he used to do a lot of deer for a lot of local guys. Since he retired, he backed off, but he's got a walk-in cooler that I built a frame system in, so we can hang up to 18 deer in. So I try to let my deer hang in the cooler 2 weeks. So
you like to age it that way?
Yeah, I do. I try. I don't have to, and if I'm mounting something, I'll peel it off quicker so that the hair doesn't start slipping. But if I'm for eating 2 to 3 weeks, I'll try to hang everything as long as it's consistent and a commercial grade cooler like that. Everything's good. It's not like making your own. It's the humidity and everything's going to be good.
Yep. Yeah. So it's funny. So you mentioned. That you used to cut up deer with your neighbor there. And if you guys remember from the whole saga with my buck, it was left out overnight. I didn't find it till 27 hours later. I think it was 60 degrees when we found it. So I was worried that...
Yeah, it was pretty warm. I was worried too.
Yeah, we were worried the meat was going to be spoiled. And actually, once I got him out, there were flies all over the place, and I was just still worried then. But we got it back to your place, and because you have so much experience cutting deer up with your neighbor, you were like, this meat surprisingly is still good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And with that, that's one of the things I did learn from him is I was probably most hunters that, or listen to that do their own deer, where I was doing my own deer and thought I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Until you meet a guy that's actually been a meat cutter. And he's from back in the day. He started breaking down cattle in a slaughterhouse. And he went all the way up to retail. So he knew so much. And basically the first time I tried to help him, it was okay, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Correctly. I can get it done. And then, it's been, I don't even know, it's been probably 15 years that I've been with him, where we were doing a lot of deer, and I learned just so much. And I still am not even close to him.
Well, he's probably really good when he doesn't like to be called a butcher and he says meat cutter. That's someone who's doesn't want to be called a janitor. They're custodial arts, right?
Yeah, no, he's and I mean, really, the knowledge that he has about even random stuff like just where glands are, and you want to pull a gland out of this area, and it's crazy, but it's just and he said that it's different. Like nowadays, if you wanted to get into that field, you would never learn what he knew because now everything comes prepackaged and
yeah.
But back then he was he was breaking everything down just like we do with deer.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so when we quartered that thing up and got the back straps, I mean, all we really lost out of that deer was a front shoulder and half a back strap, really.
Yeah, and a lot of that was the coyote damage and just from where the actual wound was. But the meat looked great, smelled great, and I think I told you that day, like one of the things I talked to him about was like airing it out. Like sometimes you peel off, let's say a back strap, and the inside got a little funk to it, or maybe you bone out a rear quarter and up around the joint. You're like, ugh, I don't know, it kind of smells bad. And he was saying, what he taught me was that bacteria will be in there, but when you pull it off and separate it and let it sit for a little while, whether it's in the cooler or just out, you'll see if the meat's still good.
Yeah.
You give it say a half hour, and that smell dissipates, and he's like, you're good. And he which I think as a hunter, and I think a lot of hunters would probably, as soon as they smelled it, be like, no good, let's get rid of this.
Toss it, yeah.
And I think I said that to you when we were doing it, and then we didn't even need to. I mean, that meat smelled great.
Yeah, it didn't even smell bad coming right out of the deer. It smelled good. So I got to thank you again for helping me with all that. I definitely owe you one when you need help dragging.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, you called me that day, and I don't think you talked about it, but I had my 18-month-old son with me on my shoulders.
I couldn't believe how well behaved he was in the woods. Like, I don't know, my son would have been crying or something.
Yeah, no, I take him out all the time scouting, and he's used to that. But yeah, if I'm available, I just like helping people that are in the sport. And
yeah, and just going back to it, it's so helpful when you're tracking a deer to get a new set of eyes on stuff. I'd been going around there and around there. I didn't walk over that particular one spot there, but I was kind of driving myself nuts looking for new blood. And the night before, like, my eyes weren't adjusted to the way the sun was coming through in the evening, and it was just so nice having a new set of eyes.
Yeah. Well, I think a big thing too, and I've done it with had friends help me out, is I think as hunters we get a notion in our head, like when in the heat of the moment, like, I bet that deer went this way, and then you kind of get fixated on he had to have gone this way.
Yeah.
Where then when somebody else comes in who wasn't in that situation with you, they can kind of have that new look and be like, well, let me go check over here. Where in the back of your head, you're like, oh, you didn't go that way.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened when I jumped him up, and he was slowly walking out there. He turned his head back and looked at me real slow. He was about 50, 60 yards, and then he turned, and I thought I saw him turn to the right a little bit. So I figured, all right, he circled back into the, the chunk of woods where there's more woods. He was kind of circling. I thought he was circling back towards the middle of it, but then I started thinking to myself, maybe he didn't, because he was just walking that way, exactly where we ended up finding him.
Yeah,
but something in my head was like, no, I think at the last second he turned that way, so I just focused over there.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about it, where he was heading, like kind of where we dragged the deer out, was he was in between that swamp and some houses, and a lot of times, you get in your head like, oh, he wouldn't go there. But
that's kind of, yeah.
But how many times, I'm sure people on the podcast come like that they find their deer like right up to a neighborhood, or I think these suburban deer, they get security there that these people out in the yards, they never bother them, and so it's a kind of a place to, hey, let's go hide.
Yeah, I was talking with my dad when he came down last week to hunt a couple days here too, and he kept saying, that deer must have died in the morning. Like everything was pointing to him dying shortly after I jumped him up, that day. But the fact that his meat was, it was cold and it didn't warm up. I don't know. It just seemed like he didn't die. What do you think happened? You think the coyote, you think he died there and then the coyotes found it? You think it was possible the coyotes?
Yeah, no, I think because the way there was no sign of a struggle. Like a lot of times if you get a deer that they grab, actually it ends up pushing the deer further, and then you'll see some areas like, where there's been a scuffle. I didn't see that day. It was kind of like they just strolled up on him and found him. But I'd say, because also too, when we found him, he wasn't all stiff. So I think he already went through rigor mortis which I don't know the exact hours, but I mean, it wasn't. I don't think he died that morning we found him.
Yeah.
You know, he was definitely dead and went through the rigor process and came out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was awesome. I was able to get that finally. It was big help to you. I don't know if I would have without another set of eyes found him, but. So you've got one in the bag this year.
Yeah, I got a doe too.
Yeah, how many times? You haven't really even sat still too many times, have you?
No, I mean I'm probably under 10 sits. And like I said, it's just been tough with work and the kids, and also too. I mean, the other thing is, I used to, be pounded every day, when there wasn't great sign, and really, and now I think we're all getting spoiled with these cell phone cameras. Is you had a good buck there, and he hasn't been there in 3 weeks.
Wait
and
till
I'm kind
it
of
heats up a little
it's
bit.
really lazy of me. Like I should, because he could show up at any time. Like how many times are you like, I'm gonna hunt that place, and then a good buck's there.
Yeah.
But really, no, I've been kind of relying on that and not pushing in, which can be good too. It's keeping the areas fresh. I'm not putting a lot of scent in the areas, but I think things will heat up here. I think we'll start seeing some good ones moving around.
And I think it's definitely, there's a lot of credence to the whole thing that the camera doesn't capture everything, because I had one of my favorite spots. I've been scouting all summer, and I got that big 9-pointer that I showed you on. He's got to be over 200 pounds, huge body. And I've been super excited to go in there, but that camera was not triggering at all. I have a cell cam there. Do you ever do this? Like I have a cell cam, and then I have another cam right above it that's shooting video. I don't know why. I like to double them up sometimes.
Yeah, no, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
So I can go back and like get a sweet video if there's good deer in there.
Yeah. And too, like you said, with the cameras, both the deer that I killed this year, the buck and the doe,
Yep.
That buck hit a scrape that should have been on camera and wasn't.
Yeah. So
and then he, and that was 80 yards out. But I afterwards I'm like, oh, he's gonna be on camera walking in. Wasn't. And then the doe that I got, she walked right in front of my camera. Like I watched her walk. She was probably 15 yards in front of the camera, right down the trail. And I shot her, and I went, and there was a cell phone camera. I'd never got it, and then thought maybe it just didn't transmit. Went back, pulled the card, and put a new card in it. It wasn't on the card either.
Yeah, those can't. What, are you running Moultries?
No. So I actually have a bunch of the Brownings running off the Strike Force, which they are the most consistent for me. They're working the best. And then I have a 2-year-old Bushnell, which was really good 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I think I probably need to update it or something. But this year it's been pretty awful.
Yeah, I've just been using those Moultries and hear good things about Spy Point too. And then you got the what's that other one that everyone's always talking about? The Reveals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But the Moultries are working pretty good. But that camera that I had in that spot wasn't triggering much. But then woke up in the morning, like I'm going to do tomorrow. I have a plan tomorrow. But if I wake up in the morning and there's a monster buck on one of my other cell cams, and I know where he's going, I might switch it up. But I woke up that morning, wasn't planning on going there. It's a long walk and a longer drive. And had the picture of my big target on one of my 2 cell cams that I have there. That was it, just one picture of him. Well, there's a doe going before him and then him. So I was like, all right, there's a hot doe there and he's there. I got to get in there. So my stand, the cam that he went by wasn't the one that my stand is at. That one's way up on the hill. It's just a different camera I have there. But I knew he was in the general area. I go and sit my stand spot. And from that stand spot, I end up seeing, I think, 5 bucks that day, and none of them went in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So it's like you can go sit, and a lot of them gave me shots too. They just never were in front of that camera, going behind it, down over the ridge. So the spot can be hot and the camera can be cold.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I've seen it. And like I said, a perfect example is this year. The 2 of them, I know they were there and they're not on there. So
yeah.
Like I said, me being lazy and saying the cameras aren't showing up, really, I should be getting out more. But I think, it's also been family and work. And
yeah. But you've got, how many? You got one you got your eye on at least right now, right?
Yeah, well, so I got a...
Saving your last tag.
I think last year I told you I had this big 8 that a bunch of guys in the area knew about.
Yep.
I actually haven't had any pictures of him. I think I just heard through a friend that somebody saw him. One guy picked up his shed last year, and I heard they just found another one this year that was all chewed up. So I think he's still around. I haven't had any pictures of him. And then I have a deer that's on my radar that has been since he's been on my radar since 18. I know the story with him, picked up with another hunter shooting him in 2017, which caused him to, get some cool characters in his rack. But I mean, I think the pictures I have in 18, definitely, I mean, in 19, I have videos of him in 19. I think back then he was like 6.5 years old. And we kept figuring like, okay, he's going to start going down. And this year he put on size. And like I said, people listen to this podcast. Like I know the local guys that know the deer I'm talking about, but he's a freak.
Another super old, like what, 8.5? You think he is?
At least. But I mean, he put on some serious size this year when everybody's like, how is this still happening? But I know there's a handful of hunters that know of him, and we were talking before we started taping here that the range that we have him in is just huge. Yeah. Part of the problem of trying to figure out where this deer is because it's all over the place. And I think I told you I really went to work with like OnX and trying to figure out over the last years of like where he's been, where the most pictures of him have been. And like I said, luckily the hunters that are hunting him, we all kind of know each other and talk. So surprisingly, everyone's being somewhat honest with each other. But, yeah. So I went crazy with OnX trying to figure out like where could his core area be. And I think I told you, I thought I had it. I'm like, this is the spot. This is going to be where he's hiding. And I hung a camera. And actually, it's an amazing spot. I haven't hunted it yet, but it's, I mean, the deer in there are just packed in there, crazy. But I haven't had one picture of them in there. Yeah, does and little bucks. I had two like decent, like 3.5, 4.5-year-old bucks. I don't think they'd score well, but nice, mature deer. But not him. So I don't know.
All right, folks, get on to www.heronhill.com and stock up on some wine, both for yourselves and, of course, for your wives and your girlfriends. Get them a case of wine and butter them up a little bit before deer season. Give them something to drink at night while they're waiting for you to get down off your stand. You got deer all around you, and you're up there in the dark waiting for them to go away so you can get down from your stand. They got to be enjoying some wine during that time. So stack up. Get yourself a case. Go to www.heronhill.com. They'll deliver it right to your door. Make sure you use code HS5 for Hunt Suburbia 5. So code HS5 for an additional 5% off all the volume discounts they already got on there. If you get 6 bottles, you get a volume discount. You get 12 bottles, you get a bigger discount. And then you can add on HS5 for an additional 5% off. These guys have been a great supporter of the podcast. Please support them. Get whatever kind of wines you like, but I like the Eclipse Red. They've got a Game Bird Red that goes really good with game birds and pairs well with venison. It's got a little bit of a fruity taste to it. Go on there, get whatever you like. If you've ordered from them before with code HS5, just go on there and use the volume discounts they already got. It's already an incredible deal, and I'll get credited for the order as long as you use HS5 at least once before. So again, thank you everybody for your support. Tell your wives thank you for letting you get up into the stand a little bit extra this year. All right, if you folks are looking for a muzzleloader, you can't go wrong with a Woodman Arms muzzleloader. They're made locally right up here in New Hampshire. They are accurate, dependable, the most accurate and dependable muzzleloader on the market. People from all over the world are buying this gun. It's extremely light. It carries great. You don't have to clean it if you use Blackhorn 209 powder, and it just keeps shooting and cutting holes in the paper like you wouldn't believe. I've went around and shot a couple friends' muzzleloaders. They're Woodmans, and they are plunking them right in there, as Lanny Benoit says. And I haven't received mine yet, but I can't wait to. I'm sure they all shoot exactly the same because the owner there, Mark Woodman, is a machinist and an inventor. And, I mean, he has crafted this thing to shoot with precision. Get on to www.woodmanarms.com, check them out, or give Timmy Bolduck a call, 603-608-7218. He knows everything there is to know about those guns and will be happy to take your call and answer it. But are you at this point where you, if you go back out, you're gonna pass like a 3.5-year-old 8, and because you've got a few bucks that you want?
Yeah, I mean, I say that, and I try to, at this point. this part of my hunting career, like I really enjoy shooting an older buck, like
Yep.
over even like a younger buck with a better rack. I mean, I don't forget, it was 3-4 years ago, I shot 2 8-pointers that, I mean, their tines were only like 3 inches long, but they were big, like heavy mass mature deer. And like, I was pumped. Like, and I had deer there with like long tines that were just 3.5-year-olds. And
Well, it's also nice because you got those 3.5-year-olds that have good potential. You want to leave for the next crop.
yeah. So like I said, this year, I kind of went into it saying I wasn't going to be so picky, because last year with that 8-pointer I was talking about, that, I mean, I showed you pictures.
Yeah.
I mean, his bases are like almost like a beer can.
Yep.
And he drove me crazy. I started calling him Benny's buck, because
It reminded me a little bit of Timmy Bolduc's buck last year. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yep, I did. And but yeah, I started calling him Benny's buck because my son, my baby, is Benny. And I hunted that deer so hard, and the 3 times I had him daylight on my camera were days that like I was gonna hunt, and my wife was like, "Hey, I got this going on. Can you watch the baby?" And can you watch Benny? And within 20 minutes, my phone would be like, bzz, bzz. And I'd look, and there he is. I'm like, oh my god. But like I said, other guys were chasing him hard too, and nobody. I did hear one kid got a shot at him last year, but as far as we know, he's still out there.
I got a buck too that's I call Austin's buck. It's my son's Austin, just because 2 days before he was born, my wife was just ready to pop, and 2 days before he was born, I walked down to go check a camera, and this is like June 23rd. He was born on the 25th, and I go down and check a camera, and on the way in, I jumped a big buck that was bedded down not too far from me, and he. It was only June 23rd, but he had a nice to start, and I could tell he was a mature buck. He was 3.5 then. This year he's 4.5, and he's a really big, nice 8-pointer. So if he walked by, I would shoot him. He's 4.5 now, nice thick rack. And I got to close the deal on Austin's buck too. Got a story. You got to kill the Benny buck on one of these.
Yeah, like I said, he's been. So the point of why I brought that up is why I'm trying to be less picky. So that deer like really like almost ruined my season last year.
Because you
I was obsessed with them, and like was so like was passing good deer, and then finally at the end of the year, I had one of my other spots. I had like 2 or 3 8-pointers that were definitely mature that I wanted to shoot, and then there was a 10-pointer that was like a 3.5-year-old that I was like, don't shoot him. And he's got great genes, and it was I could look it up when I shot him, but it was later in the season, and he came in like within 20 minutes of me sitting in the stand. I was like, he's getting it. And he ended up being the only buck I got last year.
It does feel good to but you still had another tag.
Yeah, I still had another tag, but it was just like if I wasn't so frustrated with that deer, I could have been smart and passed that nice 10-pointer.
That's Austin's buck there.
Oh yeah,
big
that's
8,
a nice buck.
And that's a 10. So that's his running mate. And last year, when they were 3.5, he was a smaller 8, and he was a bigger 8 by I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 inches.
Really?
And then this year I think he's bigger. He's a 10 now, but I don't know. That's a good angle from him.
Yeah.
And I'll show you some videos of him just from like a few days ago too. He doesn't look that great. I think he's going to be nice, really nice next year.
Yeah, that's a nice deer.
But there's a couple things I want to talk about. So like one is you mentioned this deer is like the one that you're really after. It could be 8.5 years old, but he's still we're expecting him to decline, but he's still getting bigger. It reminds me of Pat Burns' electric buck, right? Because that was an anomaly to him. He couldn't believe every year he was like, he's got to be declining. There was one year where he regressed, but then he like got bigger again in like year 9.5, 10.5.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like I said, the people that know about this deer, we keep being like, oh, he's gonna get, he's gonna start going downhill.
Yep.
And this year he actually put up another like 2 points. I mean, they're not much, but he put on, because he's always been like a mainframe 8 with junk. And this year, he's still got that mainframe 8, but put another like 2 points on his main beam on one side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And it definitely got, I mean, his G2s, G3s, I mean, they probably put on, I don't know, like 3 inches from last year, and a lot of mass. Like he's got mass all the way up through his tines.
I forget who I was talking to recently, but they were somebody mentioned that it was after Pat killed his buck, and they're just thinking that it seems like in the Northeast that deer come into their prime antler-wise later than, like, the Midwest. Like, Midwest, it's like people always say it's 5.5, 6.5 is, like, the antler prime, and then they start going downhill. But it does seem like there's a lot of bucks here that when they get to 8, that's like their prime. If they can live to be that old.
And it's also, too, it's like, I think I'm a firm believer that it's only, like, we have the genes we have, it's like only some of those deer, like, have the ability to get that big. Because, I mean, I've seen, like I said, I a couple of years ago shot 2 8-pointers that were definitely, like, 4 or 5.5 years old. Their tines were, like, 3 inches long.
Yeah.
I mean, they
just were not
they just had bad
there.
genetics. I don't think if I let those deer live till they were, 12, they would have never been any better. But, but some of these deer, I mean, and I think you've seen the pictures. Like, I killed a deer, I think it was in 2013, that was a 13-pointer with 2 drop tines.
Yeah, that had the drops.
Yeah, he had 2.
Deer.
He ended up scoring like 163, which was my biggest deer locally here, and whatever. But it was a local deer, and I couldn't believe like the genetics on that deer, like because at the time I didn't think there was anything like that running around. And I think I told you when I shot that deer, I was so like I had cameras like in that area all year long. The photos I had of this 1 9-pointer that I missed earlier in the year. So it was like another thing. I was like obsessed. Like, I missed him. I'm gonna get him. And when that deer, that 13-pointer came in, I just saw a rack like coming through the pines behind 2 does.
Yeah, right.
And the 2 does popped out. And what I did is when the does popped out, I drew and was like already looking at my pins.
Look at the rack.
And I didn't even look at the rack. And he stepped out and shot. And I thought it was a good shot, but it was before I was using like Luminox, and I just backed out. I had blood right there, and I backed out, and I just said, I'm coming back tomorrow morning.
Evening deer?
Yeah. And backed out and went back in the morning with my dad. And it was actually a pretty short track. And when we walked up, the smaller drop, I could see it. I'm like, oh my God, he's got a drop tine. And I went to go grab his antlers, and the bigger drop tine was stuck in the ground. And I couldn't get him out. I was like, and I pulled it up. I'm like, oh my God.
What a surprise.
Yeah.
And that, so you had cameras back then, though, but probably weren't running them like these days, huh? And there was
no, it was,
cams and stuff.
I definitely wasn't running the amount of cameras I'm running, but I had pictures of just like I said, it was all year. I think I killed that deer right when the shotgun season started. It was like the weekend before the Friday or Saturday before the shotgun season started.
Yeah.
So it was later in the season, and I was convinced there was nobody else in there.
And you had no idea about this buck?
No. So actually, with that buck, I had a friend of mine, like one of my guys that he taught me how to, I taught myself how to hunt at first, and it was like brown is down, didn't play the wind or anything. And he's a guy that he's in his 60s now. He's been killing big deer, every year, longer than we were alive.
Yeah.
And he really took me under his wing, teaching me about the wind. And I remember like his quote, like, if you have one place to hunt and one day to hunt and the wind's wrong, stay home.
You know what? It's like it's so freaking similar to me too. Like I taught myself basically how to hunt. My dad taught me all the basic stuff, right? And then I thought I was a good hunter for 10 years, and I was shooting little bucks in Vermont. And I thought I was a good hunter. I'd shoot a buck every 3 years maybe, and a doe in between on muzzleloader season or something. But it wasn't until I really started delving into, I mean, honestly, the podcast. But when I moved here, I had more. I was able to hunt closer, and I was starting to do a little bit more scouting. Last year, I did a ton in the podcast, just like learning from so many people that I had on the podcast. Wind is so freaking like I didn't pay attention to the wind until 3 years ago.
Yeah. So actually, after we talk about this, but I want to get into that because I just had this conversation with somebody about wind. But so anyways, like that guy told me, hey, and it was a piece, like there was a main road where I was hunting on the other side of that, and then on the other side of that piece, he's like, hey, this is early in the year, he's like, guy up there saw a 13-point buck, 2 drop tines, and I never thought anything of it. I remember him saying that deer's only 1 hot doe away from your spot.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, all right. And then, like I said, I never thought it until I picked that rack up, and I thought, that's all I heard was it's only 1 hot doe, and it was only 1 hot doe away from him, And at the time, I think I was like, oh, that's way over there. It's not going to come over here. But now, like with the cameras we're running, like you see, and you know, we were just talking about it
earlier.
earlier.
It goes back to the ranges.
How big they range.
They really do. Even in the suburbs, you think it's just a big woods thing, but it might even be more so in the suburbs.
Yeah.
That they range further out.
Yeah, because they have to get out there and find the does when they're looking. And
there's just small patch. They jump from small patch to small patch to small patch. And you can see it on a map if you zoom out. You can see if you're like, oh, like that one I just showed you that was across the street here. I was like, if you look at it on the map, and I know where I had him on camera, you see exactly he went one or two different ways to get here.
Yeah, and like you said, looking at that map, you from you know, where you are here, you said a couple times, you're like, you probably had that deer on camera because you can see on the map how the deer would go from, you know, your house to my house.
For sure.
You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so with the wind, I just had this conversation with a kid that just got into hunting. Actually, a guy I grew up with, but he just, you know, at 38 years old, decided I'm gonna start hunting. And Seek One, do you watch any of this stuff?
Yep.
So they did a video on this with all the scent control stuff and with a police canine. And I think the way they did it was a little flawed, but it showed that nothing beat the dog's nose. And I've had this conversation that, you know, some of the listeners don't know, but I run a canine at work. And I always say to people, like, if you believe all your stuff works, you do whatever you want. Take your shower, put your scent lock on, use your sprays, put your, you know, whatever boots you want on, and go hide in the woods.
You say that while you're wearing a scent lock shirt.
Yeah, I know, but it's not actually scent lock. But you know, and I said, if you believe that, go in the woods. But if we find you, we get to bite you. Nobody's taken that bet yet.
Hell no, I wouldn't take that bet.
No, but you know, I do believe, you know, and I think, and I know some really good hunters that don't care about the wind. But I think a lot of it's luck and, you know, with the wind and some deer don't care, but I'm not willing to risk that, you know, if you're like this, I'm chasing a buck since 2018.
It's not as important with like a rifle and stuff. Like up in Vermont, the way that I grew up hunting and the way that my dad and everybody around camp was hunting is they found their spot. You'd find a spot. And those guys will sit in that spot for 10 or 15 years in a row. And that's like the spot. That's their go-to spot. Opening day, they're always there. Never looked at the wind.
Yeah.
Maybe both days. Opening Saturday, then Sunday, they'd be there. And doesn't matter what the wind's doing at all. Like, nobody cared about it. Nobody ever thought about the wind. And that's how I grew up hunting. But I think with bow hunting, it's just so much more important than rifle.
And too, like you said, I've definitely had, you know, deer come in downwind and you look and go, how didn't they smell me?
Yeah, that just happened to me last week.
You know, and maybe it was the deer didn't care, or maybe it was the thermals were pulling up over its head, or I don't know. But like, all I can do is do my best or look at the weather app and say, I'm not going to hunt the stand on this. And, you know, and you always get a squirrel or something, but I just know, like I said, when a guy like my friend, you know, who's been killing deer consistently for, you know, the last, 45 years, big bucks every year, and tells me that's the number one rule, I'm going to listen.
You got to listen.
Like, I feel like when people like that, like really successful hunters tell you something like that, like, you're an idiot if you don't listen to them.
Yep.
Because, you know, why? Obviously, they learn that through mistakes. So why are you going to make the same mistakes they did?
And that's probably a guy that like lives in the woods. You say guys who live in the woods, you know, he probably lives in the woods.
Yeah.
Like Pat Burns and Neil Pendleton, who I know they just spend every waking hour they can in the woods scouting all year. I mean, it's like and those kind of guys, like you listen, I've noticed that too. Like once you get to a certain proficiency of figuring out deer and like playing the wind and stuff, I think it's just a matter of how long you can wait and how many sits you get. Right, that's basically like you learn the basics. If you're get good at scouting and you figure out the deer a little bit, if you can get in there just as many times as you can and play the wind correctly, you're going to kill big bucks.
Yeah,
That's the biggest thing.
It's putting your time in. I mean, I think 2-3 years ago, I killed a big 8-pointer that I had like a 3-year history with. I think we talked about this before, but like I had a legit like 3-year pin map of this deer, like we said, jumping to all these spots, and like where like I'd get him on camera here, you know, this one spot, and I'd know within a day or two he'd be at this spot, and then he'd be like this spot, and then it was like a big circle. And the year I killed him, I was actually like doing the same thing, pin mapping where he was, and said like, hey, tomorrow he should be back at the spot I have permission on, and I'm at work. So I took Saturday off to hunt. And I'm at work on a Friday afternoon. It was like 1, and I drove by, and this deer's bedding the doe on the side of the road. And I'm like, oh. Then I'm like, what am I gonna do? So I think I told you this one too. So I actually went in there, was trying to like bump the doe like across the street to the piece of woods that I was hunting.
Yeah.
And then finally they went in there, and then I'm like, well, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna hunt it? They still had like, to get to where I was actually hunting was like 500 yards. And I'm like, I'm just gonna go in on foot. And I actually went in. I got off work at I think 3:00. Went home, saw my wife, was like, I'm gonna go kill Dagger. And she was like, what? And went back there and walked in the woods, and there they were. And I was walking right up to him, and was a little confident, because when I was trying to bump him across the street, like he was letting me get like 20 yards from him.
Yep.
Just because he was totally locked down on this doe.
Yep.
And I got, walked in a little too fast or whatever it was, and he took off, and like my heart sunk. And I'm like, oh no. And then I looked to my right, and at 20 yards, the doe is still standing there. So I was like, he's coming back.
Yeah.
So I hid behind an oak tree, just waited there, and it was like less than 2 minutes. I see the rack coming back over the hill, and he walked into 20 yards.
Incredible.
I shot him on the ground and watched him fall.
Wow, that's awesome.
After
dude.
3 years.
What was Dagger? What did he look like?
So how we started calling him Dagger is the first year I had pictures of him. I don't know if it was what kind of injury it was, but he had his what side was it? One of his sides was like 4 points, like a full 8-pointer, but the other side had just this dagger. It was straight up in the air. It was split like 3 or 4 ways. Mm-hmm. And a big body deer. Like I knew he was mature at that time. Like I would have, even though he wouldn't have scored anything, I would have killed him that year. He came back the next year, had a regular rack, and but I could tell it was him because he had. And I could show you pictures of. He had like nice big brow tines, which I think that dagger was part of.
Yep.
And I could tell it was him, full rack. And then the next year he came back, and he was just he ended up scoring like 127 or something. He didn't have a lot of tine length, but besides his brow tines were nice. But I mean, his main beams, the mass on them were like this the whole way through. I have them mounted at the house.
Yeah, and you sent me. I think I know which one that was that you sent me there too. Yeah, your mounts are awesome. What did your double drop tine one score? Your biggest buck?
That was 163 and 2/8.
Oh, beautiful.
So
yeah,
I was. I mean, this was in 2013. Like I wasn't even thinking I'd ever kill anything like that.
It was a beautiful deer. But there's a couple that you think you got on camera that might, who knows, could get there.
Yeah,
right?
And then I think we have, I showed you some other pictures of. I got. Through the grapevine picture of another deer that's around that's like it's very
Super
similar
old,
to
too.
Pat Burns' house, Pat Burns' buck there. I think I sent you the pictures.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's like scary, but as far as I know, like people have had pictures of him. I don't think anyone's ever seen him in a stand. And
it's just like Pat's deer too. Yeah, electric buck. Nobody ever saw him until the day that Pat killed him. He saw him and dropped him.
Yeah. And last year when I was chasing that 8-pointer so hard, one of the other guys that was chasing him. We were going back and forth sending pictures of him, and that's how I got the picture of the big buck. He was like, "Well, I'm sure you have pictures of him too," and I'm like, and we were close to each other. I'm like, "No."
Yeah.
But it was like one road that the 8-pointer would cross to come where I was, and whatever it was is the big one just wouldn't cross that road. And I've definitely seen that, like how there's like I have spots where there's a main road in between 2 different spots I hunt, and there's deer that'll be on both sides of it, and there'll be some deer that just will never cross that road. They go. It's almost like that's the end of their range, and they don't ever mess with it.
All right, you guys have probably heard me talk about Onyx in the past. I use Onyx religiously, whether I'm hunting in the big woods or I'm hunting in the suburbs. It's great. I drop waypoints in there where all my cameras are. I can preset some stand locations and put in, this is a good stand location for a southwest wind, or this is a good stand location for an east wind. You can put in the icons to have different colors, so you can color code stuff, which I find super helpful. If I have a spot that I still need to get a camera out, I'll put the shade of my camera icon in there to white, so I know that I got to go and put a camera up in that location. Once it's there, I turn the shade to blue, so I know it's an active camera. I use it a lot. Property boundaries is great.
You've got a line distance on there so you can tell how far away you are from different structures like roads. So you make sure if you're in the suburbs, you're hunting in a legal spot. And then in the big woods, I mean, it's a security blanket for you. It is a GPS. It's a much better GPS than those little handheld things you got to put in your pocket. So you can download maps before you go out into a spot that might not have a cell service. So you make sure you always have the map on your phone, whether you've got the cell service or not. It really is just an invaluable tool. And if you guys want to use sign up for the first time, we've got a special code. Use code HS20 for Hunt Suburbia 20, and you guys will get 20% off OnX Maps. So go to www.onxmaps.com and use code HS20, and you'll get 20% off your membership. You will not be disappointed. It has helped me kill deer over the last few years since I've been using it. I'm addicted, and it is just another tool in the toolbox, but a necessary one. So get on to onxmaps.com, use code HS20.
It is weird, and I wonder if it's like a genetic thing, maybe. You know how like there's it's probably not related at all, but there's some fascinating studies on crows, and I love these studies. And these crows, it's a generational thing where like a flock of crows, you know, let's say came in on a farmer in 1920. They just came into a farmer's field, and the farmer started blasting crows out of the air with a shotgun. Well, those crows are super smart, and they identified his face, right? And they're like, so they can see from a long ways away. So anytime that farmer came out after that, if the crows were up in tree, they'd fly away. Like whether they're in a tree that's 400 yards away, they could see the farmer's face, identify him, bad man, fly away.
Wow.
And then for generations of crows, you know, like 30, 40 years later, the crows, even though he didn't shoot any more out of the air, like 30 years later, those crows identified his face as well, like it was passed down.
Yeah, like they picked up on it from being there when one of the other ones had a reaction to it.
Yeah, it was passed down through the genes or something. And what's making me say that is, so my neighbor across the street, I think we talked about him before. I think you know who he is, and he told me, he's like, man, I wish you lived here a few years ago, because there was a huge buck that was hit by a car out on that main road, and
yeah.
I was the first one to pull over. The person in front of me hit it. I pulled over, and they, whoever got there then asked me if I wanted it, and he had no idea what to do with it. But let's say that buck was the father or grandfather of this big buck or something. Who knows? I wonder if like that kind of thing gets passed out. Like,
yeah, like just don't leave this area.
That road's dangerous.
Yeah.
Stay the hell in here.
I would say if there was any truth to that, it would probably be passed on from the mother, like when they were fawns.
Yeah,
where the mother had like a crazy like fear response to a road, and they probably stuck with those fawns.
Well, that goes back to the genetics conversation too. Like, I was listening to a Meat Eater episode recently, and Steven Ranella had somebody on there, and who'd done studies on it. And for years it's like, all right, in order to reach antler potential, you have to have, it's either genetics or the food. It's like food and genetics, and those are the two things that directly relate to the potential of a buck to get to his antler potential, right? But the studies that they were finding, I think they went to South Dakota, to two different regions of South Dakota. One that has great genetics, so to speak. The bucks have great antlers at a younger age. And then they went to a different part of South Dakota where the genetics just kind of like Vermont, where, the bucks up there, you can get a 4-pointer that's 180 pounds. And they think, so they took fawns from both of those places, and they started raising them in captivity to do a study. And what they found out, what they're starting to find out, is that it has a lot more to do with the mother. And not just the mother's genes, but just how the mother, how she was when she gave birth, how she was during the pregnancy. Was she stressed? Was she looking for food all the time? Did she have a lot of food? Just the general, like, her whole demeanor and everything, and her whole circumstance and everything around her. If she wasn't stressed and she had food, then when she gave birth to that has so much more genetic potential than like all the other stuff.
Really?
Yeah. just like if she's not stressed, she's living a good life, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Not searching for food. So, yeah, it has a lot to do with the mother.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the learned behaviors are going to be that. You think of what how much of an imprint the mom puts on them when they're little of like what to do, what not to do. But like you said, that main road, that's a place that I've been hunting for 15 years, and I have every year. Certain deer will cross that road and hit both spots.
Yeah.
Other deer will not ever do it. Like they'll be on that side and same thing. So like that dagger buck, that was at the edge of his territory. I get him down there. He would never cross that road, but he would cross 5 different roads going the other way. It's crazy.
Yeah. Do you remember what he was talking about? Some huge buck getting hit?
No, but I mean, obviously with my job, we deal with a lot of deer hits in this area.
Yeah.
And over my time doing that, I've really taken anybody, unless they're like a pretty well-established hunter, taking any bit of like time when somebody says, "Oh, a big buck was killed."
Yeah, but
because I've had so many people be like, "Oh, this huge buck was killed," and I go down there and take a look, and it's like a 2.5-year-old 6-pointer.
Yeah, but what makes me, just for this dude in particular, have some credence to it is because he'll text me pictures like, "Oh, there's a buck in my yard right now. There's a little buck," and he'll send it to me, and it's like a pretty nice buck, like a decent 8-pointer.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, "It's a little buck," and then he always goes, "You should have seen the one that was killed."
Oh, really?
And even that one, I showed him, the one that you helped me, which is a pretty good buck. He's probably going to be right around Pope and Young, 125.
Oh yeah.
And I showed him that, and he said, "Oh, it was much bigger than that."
Oh, well, maybe it was then.
So I wonder. I always wish. I'm like, man, I wish you had a picture of it.
Yeah.
He said it was huge. Nobody could barely move it. It was a gigantic body too.
Yeah, I know down on that road a couple years ago, late season. I think it was maybe the season just ended. There was a roadkill down there. I didn't see it in person, but a friend of mine that works in the DPW sent me a picture. And it was a buck without antlers, and the body was like massive. Like,
oh wow!
It was on the back of one of the DPW like dump trucks.
Yeah,
and it like took up the whole tailgate. Like it was fresh, so it wasn't like it was bloated. It was a huge deer.
What? And that was in like January, February.
Yeah, well, there was I think right at the end of the season, so it might have been end of December, maybe beginning of January.
Early drop or something. Yeah. And then another thing. When one of the Kevin Polis episodes, when he was on here, he was talking about a buck that ranged, I think, like 4 towns, and it was crazy. Like he showed it to me on the maps. I forget what towns they were, but just going back to the ranges again. I mean, it is just
that could be the buck that we were talking about earlier, because I'm pretty sure Kevin shot at that deer before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He was talking, and what I remember was he said this buck was so dark, and I think it was his fur was dark too, like it was almost black like a moose, and it was so unique, and it was like 4 or 5 towns south of here, and he had it on camera there, and then somebody called him that he has permission to hunt around here, and was like, there's a giant buck, and he sent a picture of it, and it was like that same one.
Oh wow!
But it was during the rut, and during the rut, these bucks can just go small patch to small patch to big patch to small patch, and chasing a doe.
Yeah, Kevin's a good guy. I met Kevin through cutting his deer.
Oh yeah,
So he used to use our friend Hank, who, like I said, he's not doing it anymore. But I met him, and then it ended up like through the grapevine, like he's cousins with guys that I knew through hunting, and
his cousin got a big one last year that was on one of my cameras over here.
And actually I had pictures of that deer too. Remember?
Yeah.
My kids called that.
Oh yeah.
My kids called that deer spook, because every picture was at night of him, so it was like the eyes were glowing. So like, that's spooky. They get every time they're like, why is it? He looks like the devil. I'm like, it's a night picture. But and that deer was all like, I had pictures of him like not even anywhere near here. And then I know you had pictures of him. Then he was even further, this way.
Yeah.
And then he kind of got killed in the middle of everything. But he was all over the
giant
place.
7-pointer.
Yeah. And then another friend of mine, Nick, he called me one day. He goes, I just got out of the woods at a spot that's north of here. And he's like, yeah, that deer spook that you have pictures of walked by me. I'm like, you sure? He's like, guaranteed, guaranteed that was him.
Yeah. Well, you just gotta and Kevin told me the other day too. He's like, well, starting this week, there's going to be a lot of bucks that, like, anybody who's got like a buck on camera, that's been in the same area for a while, whatever, they're leaving their home range and now they're going to start roaming. But that's also exciting too, if you're in a spot, because you have no idea what's going to show up. Could be any buck that you don't even have on camera that's coming from a giant state forest or something. You know?
And it's
come roaming by you.
And he's right. I mean, this time of year is, it's always like, those deer that you have on camera and they disappear, and you're like, oh, like, is he dead? He's out chasing, but did somebody kill him? And then when you ever get, like, as the rut winds down and you get a picture of him again, it's almost like, oh my God, like, even if I don't kill him, at least he's still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love getting these bucks that like I was showing you a few videos the other day that are just 2.5 years old, but you can tell they're going to be really nice.
Yeah, and it's good, when you get into killing deer that, like, you've had a history with, like, it means a lot. And like, I think, like, the Facebook post I put up when I killed that dagger buck was just like, I'm kind of disappointed that the chase is over.
Yeah,
and but it's, when you can see them and you because, like you said, growing up in Vermont, and the same thing is, like, I grew up with, like, a bunch of old Italian guys. It was brown, it's down. And then even when I got into it, there was so many people like, well, what are you going to pass for? Somebody else is just going to kill him, or, he's going to get hit by a car. And when you can pass, 2-3 years of passing a deer, seeing him grow, and then you get to kill him and he's a nice mature buck. I think it means a lot, and it's almost like you're like, oh, I did but you kind of have, like, a feeling of, like, I did my part for, like, conservation, like, that I let him pass his genes on and let him grow up. And
definitely.
But yeah, and I've also made the mistakes. Like I said, last year I killed a 10-pointer. I was on the no-hit list. I think.
And there's probably been some that you passed up that somebody else ended up shooting too.
And 2-3 years ago, I had that one road we were talking about. There was, like, some of the deer don't cross. I had a picture of a 3.5-year-old 12-pointer, which
that's great for a 3.5-year-old.
Yeah, and he had and that's why I was like 3.5-year-old 12-pointer, and the points were short. At the end, I'm like, definitely not shooting this deer, and had it in my head that he's not going to cross his road. Was hunting on the other side of the road, in a morning sit, right at first light, in comes this deer, and I just see good sized body, points everywhere. I'm like, phew. Walks in, I shot him. Ended up actually only took out one lung, chased him like all day. Finally got him. Like, I was tracking blood through a swamp, but when I walked up to him, I get my hands on him, like, oh. And it was like, only like, and I hate this feeling, because when you take an animal, you want to be happy, but I had this, like, disappointment because I was like, I wasn't supposed to shoot him.
Yeah.
But no, he was a good deer. Would have been better if I, if I just realized it was him.
Oh man, I got to show you a few too. But yeah, it's really hard to do, to build up a lot of history with a buck and then kill him. Right? It's not easy to do, especially in suburbs where
they will. I mean, a lot of times, I've had luck with deer coming back to the same area, but I've had deer that were mature, like at 3.5, 4.5, where I'm like, oh, nobody killed them. They're going to be back. And then completely change areas, like where I knew where they were, but it wasn't huntable, or like I just couldn't get permission on it. But like, it never came back to the area. And it's not like I had any bad experiences, or they winded me, or I missed them, or wounded them, and they just stopped coming back to that area at 3.5, 4.5 years old. And I couldn't tell you why.
Yeah, it's weird because like so far. And I've only been living here for this is the third year. The 2 bucks I was just showing you, the Austin buck and his running mate there, last year were both 8s, and the one who's a 10 this year was a smaller 8 last year. They were in the same place in the summer both times, exactly the same spot. Spent their entire summer there, and they're doing pretty much the same exact thing as they did last year too. Now, like this time of year, like their patterns are the same. But if they, next year maybe I don't see them there, and they completely change it up, but they're doing exactly the same thing they did. And actually, the Austin buck, I went back to the first year that I lived here, and I had a camera right behind my house here, and the biggest buck I had there was a nice 8-pointer. It's the same exact rack. I'm pretty sure it was the Austin buck as a 2.5-year-old, and he was a beauty 2.5. He was inside the ears, but like nice.
Yeah, nice curl.
Curls all the way in, and he looked really big to me. At that point, that was like a big buck. I was like, man, I live in an awesome spot. There's a big buck right there.
Well, I think I told you when you were at my house that day and I was showing you mounts, my, small world, my first mature deer that I ever killed and got mounted was in this piece of woods right behind your house. You know, a butter who has 10 acres. That's where I hunted. And it was the first time. That was really like that was a long time ago now, but it was like the time that I said to myself, like, okay, like enough of shooting like 1.5-year-old bucks. I want to start chasing big bucks, but it happened right behind your house here.
Yeah. Well, I think in total it's like 45 acres, inside all the roads back there. And that's perfect piece of suburban hunting woods, Deer go through there all the time.
And I think it was like right this time of the year, I was hunting in the morning, and, good learning lesson for a young guy at the time was in came like I forget, it was a spike horn or a fork horn or something, and I came to full draw, and I had this little voice in my head like, you want to kill a big buck, you keep shooting these. And I let down, and he hit a scrape and walked away, and then here came a doe, and right on her ass was the buck that I shot, and he came into like 15 yards. I shot him and watched him drop, and I was like, like at that point, it changed my hunting career. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do now.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, same with me. Like we're just last year, I passed like 25 bucks or something. Like it was just like I only want to get, and I killed those two in there, which aren't giants, but I think
but they're mature.
Yeah,
mature deer. And
yep, I think they're both 3.5, and they were great. And I passed so many deer to get to them. And that second one, the 6-pointer, it goes back to the like when a buck gets on lockdown, how you can pretty much do anything because I was kneeled down next to a tree watching this little tiny fawn doe come in, and I was just paying attention to her because she was kind of circling around behind me. And then she stopped and was looking over her shoulder a lot. So I peeked around the tree to see what she was looking at, and that buck was coming in. And I shot at him and missed him because I thought he was 30 yards. He was 37. I just didn't get time to range him. And it went under his stomach. But he knew I shot an arrow. He was staring right at me, but that doe was on the other side. I was directly in between him and that doe.
Wow.
And he didn't run away or nothing. He took one bound back and just stared at me. And he let his guard down after 7 minutes. And because I had it all on, I was timing it, and he was actually standing in front of one of my cell cams, so I could see all this stuff happen. I could see when he bounded back when I missed him. And then I could see 7 minutes when he let his guard down. And he just started kind of walking away when he let his guard down. And he stopped after about walking 10 feet, turned back around and started going exactly the same way. And he was going to go loop back to where that doe went. But he was watching her behind me the entire freaking time.
Yeah.
And
they get silly.
Yep.
They do.
They let their guard down for sure.
Yep. And it's good. I think that's like part of hunting and like learning all that stuff is, and like I said, I spent years just shooting everything I could. And, if I had tags, I was filling them. And, I think that teaches you a lot about deer hunting to make that, next step. Because I was telling you that a good friend of mine just started hunting at, 38. And we were talking about deer and I was showing him pictures. He's like, oh, I want to kill a big buck. This is his first year. And I told him, I said, you want my recommendation? I said, don't wait for a big buck. I said, you just got into it. There's so much things. There's so many things to learn about when to draw. Like you're going to mess up so many times when to draw.
Yep.
Just even, getting through buck fever or deer fever, whether it be a doe. And I said, just take some time and learn how to kill deer before you try to make that jump to I'm going to kill big deer. Because I think if you jump over that step, I know some guys that got into it and did that, and they're not very successful because I think they never got all the bugs. And as you know, you don't get the chances with I'd say at 3.5 and older buck or even a doe, when they get old, you're not going to get those chances, to screw up and, get 2 shots at a deer or get caught, moving in the tree and they kind of forget about you. So any new hunter, I say, hey, go out there, have fun, get meat, make your mistakes, on those deer. And before you even think about, I'm going to go start chasing mature bucks.
For sure. That big mature 9-pointer that I'm after, and I'm going to go try to hunt him tomorrow. I've got good wind for it, and it's a nice day after this storm. I think there's going to be a lot of deer moving. But when I so many videos and cell cam pics of him this summer, all the way through to that's you, all the way through to the fall. I went in there and hunted for the first time this year, sat in that stand, and a few years ago I would have completely changed the way I handled this scenario. But I'm in that stand, I rattled a little bit, 2 bucks came charging down the hill, and I was like, man, that's cool. I see 2 bucks charging right after I'm rattling, but I look to my right because there's more movement, and here comes my target, Giant 9, and he's just moseying in right on top of the ridge that's about eye level. I'm like, my stand is down at the bottom of the ridge, but it's pretty high up. And the ridge line that he was walking on is only 30 yards away, and he was right there. But I see him coming in, and, you know, if it was just a couple years ago, I would have grabbed my bow, turned right away, and he would have picked me off immediately. Yeah. But I see him coming in, and my bow is still hanging there, and I was like, all right, I need to wait. First of all, I can tell he's not in any shooting lanes. You know, a few years ago I might have flung an arrow too, but I'm not doing that now. I got to wait for him to actually get into a spot I can kill him. I don't want to injure him. And so he's going, and when he gets behind a big tree, I grab my bow, slowly move it over, put on the release. I have a few little spots he can go. He doesn't, obviously. They always do that. He goes around it, so it doesn't go into that lane. He kind of circles around the point of that ridge, and then I see him coming in towards me. He's quartering towards me. Still, there's no lanes. And then all of a sudden, he gets behind this big split V tree, and he just stands there. And I'm watching. At that point, he's there, and he's not moving. I can see every once in a while tines on the sides of the tree, and his nose going up. He's trying to wind me, and my wind was going that way. But he didn't spook, so he didn't he didn't catch my wind and run off. It got to the point where he was behind that tree for such a long time that I was thinking, and I was watching those other bucks fight up on the hill that came charging down first. They were fighting up there, and I was watching them in the binocs to see if any of them were big enough. They were pretty good bucks, but not this, the size of this dude. And I got to the point where I was like, man, where is that buck? I haven't seen him, and it was 20 minutes he was behind that tree.
Wow. He thought he left.
Yeah, thought he left, and a few years ago, I would have probably hung my bow, just thought he slipped out, hung my bow up, sat down, which you're risking all kinds of noises, sitting back down in your stand because I was standing. All that stuff you're risking. I stayed with my bow in my hand and my release on the entire freaking time, knowing he's probably still there. And then eventually I see him step out a little bit, and I'm like, dude, he's gonna come right into my spot. I can just see his nose now. And again, he's sniffing. He ends up turning around and walking the other way. But I would have never had even that 30. It was a 30-minute experience overall. Would have never had that a couple years ago.
Yeah, because you would have messed up early.
Oh, I would have messed up so many times.
Yeah, and like I said, I think like with movement and things, and I know, like you said, what you can get away with now. I know different tree stands what I can get away with.
Yep.
I got a few spots that are in like beautiful hemlocks, like where I can get away with murdering them. But then other ones, like where I killed that doe, that's like I see them coming, and like as soon as I get behind a tree, I'm drawing. I'm gonna stay at full draw because I'm not gonna get away with anything else, until it's time. So it's just I think that's all just experience of when did you screw up like this last? And I know like before I ever killed a big buck. Probably one of the first big bucks I ever saw I screwed up on was hunting down. I mean, I was young. I was probably like 19, 20, hunting like along like on these like hemlocks like on the edge of a swamp. And it was right when the buck roar first came out.
Yeah.
And it was like this time of year, and I hammered on the call a few times, and all of a sudden I heard like smash, crack, coming. I'm like, oh wow. And there was a little pine tree right behind me where I couldn't see whatever it was coming. I couldn't see it. It was coming right at my tree. Knowing now, I would have just stood still and let that thing come right below me and walk past me and then draw. Well, it came out, and it was, I forget what it was, but it was a big mature buck. And, I almost shit myself. I drew right with him, looking at me. And he snapped up, looked right at me, and took off. And I was like, oh, wow, I messed that up. And couldn't believe, it didn't, but that was a lesson like that taught me for the rest of my life.
Yep.
Of when you can draw and when you can't.
That's like my buddy Scotland, who was just here last week too. It's his first year. He killed a buck last year in Vermont with his rifle, and he got into bow this year, and he's already saddle hunting, and he's one sticking with a 3-step aider and climbing the tree. He's a super athletic kid, but he's up there, and I'm trying to tell him, because he's like, first year I see, I'm shooting it, and I'm like, that you should have that mentality, but I'm just telling you, it's the rut right now, and I'd been seeing chasing. That's the day before, the thing I was just telling you about with the 9-pointer coming in, and the bucks charging down the hill after I rattled. That was the day before he came down, so I knew that there's some great rutting activity happening. So I was just like, I'm just telling you, you can go in with the mentality, like if you see a doe coming, to shoot her, but make sure when you see her, you look behind her,
Yep.
and just see if there's anything coming, and get into the mentality and not look at her quick, see it's a doe, she's on her way, and then just don't pay her any attention and just move your eyes and see if there's anything coming behind her. And if there is something coming behind in your saddle, it can be tricky to do a turn all the way around and get a shot that way. I was trying to tell him, if you get in that scenario, let it pass you, just like you just said.
Yeah.
Let it pass you. You're going to get a quartering away shot if you're, probably.
Yeah, like you said, just knowing, like, to have that mindset of, like, it's the rut, here's a doe, and look behind.
Yep.
Because I know I did the same when I was young, too, 20, 21, was hunting opening day rifle in New Hampshire, and where you can, luckily for me, because this is a mistake that happened, but you could shoot, opening day was the only day you could shoot does. But looking back on it now, I hear, coming down this this hill, crash, smash, smash, and I hear like big loud grunts, like wah, wah, but the whole way. Now looking back on it, what is it? It's a buck chasing a doe.
Yeah.
At the time, all I thought was, it's a buck.
Yeah.
So down it comes, and out steps this deer, and put the rifle up and shot, and went to walk up, and a deer started running away. I looked, and there's a dead deer, and I walked out, and I shot the doe.
And it was a buck running away.
Yeah, it was. So the buck that was chasing, which I wanted to shoot, which I thought was the only, just being stupid.
Yeah.
Yep. But like you said, all these mistakes are things that make you a better hunter down the road.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's why, like, telling people, go out and hunt and have fun and do what you want, but every time you make a mistake, definitely put it in the file, and don't forget it.
Yeah, Scotland, he ended up having an 8-pointer come in, on his, was it his last night? I think it was his last night here. And we were only hunting about 100 yards away from each other, which is actually pretty fun. I think we're going to do more of that too. Like, because I'm scouting all these places. I have multiple cameras about 100 yards away. So, if, multiple routes, and the deer could choose either one. Put a buddy on one of them and you on the other. You can almost see each other or see each other.
Yeah. Oh, I've done it, and it is fun.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So, but he had an 8-pointer come in, and he had to do that turn all the way around and draw. And he didn't wait for him to go past like I was telling him to. And he turned all the way around, and that buck spotted him immediately and had him picked.
Yep.
And stayed behind a tree, and he never got a shot on him.
Yep. And I think there too, the other thing is like that, picking your stand locations, and I think a lot of that, like what I've picked for stand locations, has been because of times I got busted, where I'm looking for cover. I'm looking, even if I don't have, the perfect tree, trying to find a tree that's got like, a pine tree behind it, or at least like a tree with a bunch of branches to break me up more, because there's been so many times that, in days past where it's like you make like a little move and you got every deer looking at you. And I dealt with that last year. I went down late season last year. A buddy has a couple leases in Kentucky, and him and his family hunted for the rut, and they go down there to kill big bucks. But he was like, "Do you want to come shoot does bow season?" It was like in January. I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So we went down there, but I mean the place was amazing. Every place we hunted was amazing, but it's all fields, and the woods, like all the trees are small. So I mean, I'm no skinny guy. I'm up in that tree. The tree looks like a lollipop.
Were you using a climber?
No, they were hang-ons, but still, like, and I learned, because there's also so many deer down there. It's like you see like a group of does coming in. It was like 15 does.
Yeah.
And down there too, it's everyone. It's the way they hunt late season. All the crops are gone. It's over corn piles, so it's like they're coming to this one spot. So you got 15 does coming to this one spot on the edge of a field, and I'm looking like a lollipop in the tree. So I got popped a few times, and then finally, like I said, I saw these does coming in. I mean, they were like 40 yards out. I drew, and I was like, I'm just holding. And that's all I got. Both the does I got down there were like that.
That's another thing, too, like that an inexperienced hunter doesn't understand is that when there's multiple deer around, you have to keep tabs on all of them.
Yep.
And kind of wait for, like, because a doe will pick you off. A doe that's with a buck, that's what happened to me last year. I had another nice target 9 that came in 2 days after I killed that 9-pointer in there. This doe came in, and my big target 9, it was like a 159, was behind her. And they came in from behind me, and I just slowly turned around, and I see the doe come in, and I turned my eyes to what, like, I didn't even think they could turn that far back just to see if there's anything behind her. I was like, oh my God, he's there.
Yeah.
He was right. He was behind her 20 yards away. But when I had this, tried at that point, I should have just done, what I've learned now is let them keep coming and go past me. But I was like, I got to stand up and slowly turn around. So I waited for her to get behind a tree to stand up and slowly turn around, but she heard it.
Yeah.
And then I was picked off at that point. But, those does, you got to worry about them because if there's a buck on them and she picks you off, and if she spooks, that buck's going with it, And,
so you can't beat it.
Yeah.
And then all the calls and, too, like I like calling, but like this time of year, if there's a buck on a doe, I don't care what you're doing. I really don't, it could happen, but I haven't had any luck with it. If they're on a doe, you could make every call in the world. They're not coming off that doe.
Yep.
If she is ready. But like I said, there's that picture I sent you today, me and my son when he was little, of that big, heavy, I have him mounted. I think you saw the mount, but he had a broken main beam, which was crazy because, that main beam was so thick. But that deer, I just got permission on that spot, went in and hung the stand like at noontime and said, I'm gonna hunt it this afternoon. Came back, didn't see a deer. I was on a big heavy run, and right at last light, here come 2 does, and behind him I just see a buck. Knew it was good, and I stood up to grab my bow, and she caught me, and she locked up. He locked up. He was at 40 yards, and it was getting closer and closer to legal light. I'm like, oh. And finally, it was right as I was like, I'm gonna, that's it. I'm not gonna get a shot at this buck. She took 10 steps down the trail, and he just got there enough that I took a shot. And actually, it was bad because it was as soon as I shot, a 40-yard shot, and I hit guts, and I was like, oh no.
Oh, you heard that?
And just got down, didn't even look, left, came back in the morning with a buddy, couldn't find the arrow, couldn't find any blood. I'm like, oh. And we just started walking around, and I had my son, you could see in the picture too, he was little at the time, and we just got on a trail, it got out to a trail, and I was basically looking for my buddy to be let's go, let's call it, and I found blood, a lot of it. We trailed him down, and he crossed a power line, and we found him, and I couldn't, and I really didn't know what that deer was. I knew he was big, but when I found him, that was a big old gnarly buck.
Yeah.
And crazy mass up to his tines, and the fact that he had, even my buddy was you're mounting that, it's got a broken main beam. I'm dude, he's sick. And and I think I saw he
reminds me of the Kevin Polis buck he's got, looks just like him.
Yeah,
broken main
it was
beam
the same. I think it was the same year that he killed that broken deer that I killed this one because we talked about it.
Yep.
And actually they were kind of. Those deer could have seen each other. it was a big piece of woods, but
they could have broke each other.
They could have broke each other. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was just so crazy to see a deer that big. And I think a couple things that were cool about that deer too is he had scars all over his face. He had a split ear. My taxidermist was like, do you want me to fix the ear? And I was like, no, leave it split.
Definitely.
And then 2, I showed you if you look at that mount, most people look at it and be like, did the taxidermist screw that up? The antlers look crooked.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yep.
Yeah, and what it was is when we actually caped that deer out, he had a big, giant fracture in his skull that was healed, years past. But I'm guessing, hit by a car, broke his skull. And so his pedicle, it was, all, off center where it should be. So that whole antler was just not right. But it was a cool buck.
So much character on that one, man.
And you saw, he had just all the points off his bases.
Yep.
And he was missing a lot. He was, never mind how much of his main beam, but I think, he was missing another point. He had a split on his G2 that was broke off.
But that's another thing that like you did on that one that an inexperienced hunter isn't going to know until you go through it. And it's like once you get picked off, there is coming back from that. You can come back from it. You just have to stay as still as you possibly can.
Yeah.
It depends on how long that deer wants to stand there.
Yeah.
For some reason, there's two experiences that I've had where it's been 7 minutes exactly. Like, I don't know if it's a magic number or not, but like the first year that I was here too, I had a nice mature buck go by 60 yards away, and he was just like going, no shot, and he was going away from me. So I decided to rattle and grunt, and that buck came all the way back up the hill towards me, to about 30 yards, but standing behind a whole bunch of stuff. And he was making his way in, and if he took one more step, he was going to be in my perfect 30-yard lane, but he never took that step. He stood there behind a tree with a tree in between me and him, and again, I could just see his tines and his nose. Like, they know where, for some reason, they sense that danger, and he stood there, and I was filming it the whole time, and it was 7 minutes frozen still, not even moving like a tine or nose. 7 minutes frozen still, and then I see him go, turn his head, and like start licking his back. And I'm like, all right, he's his guard's up. He's like, cool. He's not going to keep going that way, but at least he's not sketched out now. He turned around completely and started walking the same way he came in. And then that one last year was 7 minutes exactly too. But if you can stay completely still, they're somewhat blind. Yeah. They'll forget. They're somewhat dumb too. They're smart, but they're somewhat dumb.
Yeah, and it is sometimes they do really stupid things, and then other things like you said when they just know there's danger. Last year, I had a doe come in like this time of year where there's a buck on their ass, and I look, and it was a 3.5-year-old 6-pointer. That, I mean, he had like some mass to him and stuff, but I wasn't gonna shoot him. But wind was good. So I didn't even get up. I was sitting in my stand, just looking like out of the corner of my eye, watching him. So I didn't move. He definitely didn't win me. I didn't walk in that way. She was coming right in. I think she passed me at like, I don't know, 10 yards, walking like nothing. And he got into about 25 yards and just stopped dead and like had that look like something's not right. Yeah. And he was on a hot doe, and he stood there for, it was probably 7 minutes. But and then he broke off of her, like, because she came right by me. He broke off of her, walked like way around through the brush, like keeping an eye on where she went. But whatever it was, he had that sense of like, something's wrong here. I don't like it. And he walked way around and ended up waiting out at like 80 yards. And she walked through. It was like almost like a thorny area. Yep. And she walked through the one trail that I was hunting that went through it. And he followed her around and picked her up on the other side, but he wouldn't walk by me.
Man, yeah, it's just something. They just have that sense, man. They have that sense. And it happened so many times. And, I mean, just a few days ago, that when that 9-pointer, it almost sounds just like the one I was just telling about, where that dude waited 7 minutes, frozen still. You could just see his nose and his tine, but he didn't move at all. They like to do that. Yeah. Where their eyes... It's like they keep their eyes in between, a tree. They keep a tree in between their eyes and you. Yeah,
and we are lucky though that, like you said, they are blind, because you can get away with it if you don't move. Because just the other night when I think I was texting you when I was hunting, where I had a bunch of times in that tree, deer come by, they never see me, and I had a tom turkey walk by, and he looked up. And like, I wasn't moving because I wasn't going to shoot the turkey. I had no interest in shooting fall turkeys. Like, I don't want to mess up my deer spot. So, but he walked up and looked up and just saw, like, I was all camo, had gloves on, everything. The only thing, I wasn't wearing a face mask, so my face was exposed, but I had a hat on. Yep. He looked up, started putting, and ran away. Yep. And I'm like,
well, their eyes are so good.
Yeah, but I was like, what a different. Like, thank God the deer don't have eyes like that.
But also, you can get that's another thing that rookies might not understand. If there's something that's got you pegged, even if it's a deer, if you're not wearing a face mask or you're not wearing gloves, your hands and your face stick out like crazy. If everything else is camo, yeah, and especially with our bald heads too. If we didn't have a hat on,
yeah, no. And usually I do have, I wear something up over my face, but it was just I was just sitting there, and what it was is it was like, oh, it's a turkey. I didn't even think about it. I was like, whatever. I'm not gonna shoot the turkey. I really wasn't that worried about it. But he freaked out, and I didn't even move.
Oh, their eyesight is something else. Just picking up, but they pick up movement, but also must be.
Yeah. Well, they can. From what I hear, they can see like we do. So, if you walked by me in the tree, you'd be like, "Hey, look, there's a guy up there."
Especially if, definitely. If there's no camo on it. But then another thing too, like this is turned into the theme of the podcast. Like, oh man, what was I just gonna say? What were we talking about? I just totally lost my train of thought.
You're talking about the theme of the podcast.
I know, but before that, there was another, wearing gloves, wearing the face mask.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing. The guy that taught me a lot about hunting with gloves is he stressed going into your, even if you don't want gloves on, going into your setup to climb your tree and stuff, to wear gloves, just because your hands leave so much oil.
Oh yeah,
and like scent.
Oh yeah. What I was thinking was just eye contact. Don't look at a deer right in the eye, especially if they're got you kind of pegged.
Yeah.
Look past them or like look at their body. Just don't look at them. If you look at them in the eye, they can pick up the eyesight.
Yeah, I think it's like a predatory response.
Yeah.
Like they know, like, whether it be a coyote or whatever's chasing them.
Yep. And I try not to touch anything in the woods, like you said, because your hand oils and stuff. Yep. And even like a branch rubbing across your forehead or something. Like I'm kind of like going through the woods like the Matrix, I am very particular about not touching it. But deer they'll smell my boots and stuff.
I think that's one of the things that we do get away with the suburban hunting that we do. Is
Yeah,
I think that
sure.
they are where I believe that if they smell you in there, that you're in there actively, they're gonna run. But I think ground scent.
Yeah,
I think we get
they cross that all the time.
Yeah, I think we get a little more leeway than like if you were up, hunting big woods where there's no reason for a human to be in there.
For sure. Yeah.
That is one thing, I definitely think. But same thing is, when we're talking about the scent, like I hunt in rubber boots and stuff. I don't think that makes that big of a deal. Like I said, if you like I'm working tomorrow, if you come out and wear your rubber boots and go run in the woods, dog's still gonna track you. So I mean, they can still, there's a lot of different odors that are involved there, but
yeah, and sometimes I'll put like a Dawn estrus on my boots and on the bottom when I walk in. I like to do that during these, like this last week and this week coming up. Just before I go in, put a little on the bottom of my boot, and I did have, I don't know, 2 or 3 bucks last year come in right on my boot track after I did that. They weren't super mature bucks, but they were nice little bucks. Came in right on my boot track doing that, and then the one that I shot this year that you helped me recover, that one came in. I mean, that was October 7th. I didn't have any estrus on. That would be stupid. October 7th, but who knows? Maybe a deer would still follow it. But he came in smelling my boot track, and there was no scent on it other than whatever I walked through that day.
Yeah, but I think too a lot of things is like with the scent, like how we train our canines is like it's not just the scent of a human, it's also like ground disturbance. And, so the way I say, like, if you walk across your lawn, if you were somehow to be completely scent-free, dropping no human scent, which I don't believe is possible, just stepping on the grass, every time you step on the grass, as those blades of grass bend and break, they're releasing a different odor.
That makes sense.
So in the same thing as you're walking through the ground and you scuff up the leaves, like, that's putting off a different odor. So I think deer might have, some interest to that just because it's like, whoa, what came through here? So they might follow trying to pick up on an odor to say, hey, was it a deer? Was it a coyote? But I think obviously that, they're going to pick up on those odors too.
That's super interesting. Yeah, maybe talk a little bit more about the dog and the dog's nose, since you know so much.
Yeah,
about.
So like that, like the way we train is all that. It's not just human odor. It's ground disturbance. It's also ground transfer. So like if you were walking on the grass and then walked across the pavement, like then your boot prints are putting down grass smell on the pavement. Or it'd be the same as like if you walk through a swamp where you're all muddy and then you get out. Well, for the next, however long it would be, let's say up to 100 yards, your boots still smell muddy. So you're bringing that swamp smell out into the forest. So you get all these different things that,
and that's all it needs to keep on a track. Rather, it doesn't really need your odor.
Yeah, and it's still
because no matter what you're going through, then even maybe the pavement, you're carrying the pavement smell onto the grass.
And it's all like in the way we can't comprehend. Like, for anyone wants to say they know, any of these animals, deer, dogs, and anything that they can. We can't comprehend how they smell.
Yeah.
And it's the same as how a deer couldn't comprehend how we see. It's just, but they pick up all odors all the time. They can't shut them off. Like that's one of the things we learn with the dog stuff is like how we can, like if I came in here to your house tonight and you were cooking a pizza, I'd come in and be like, oh, it's a pizza. And then as we sat here for 20, 30 minutes, I wouldn't smell it anymore because I get like nose blind to it because our brains are so busy they shut it off because it's a distraction. Mm-hmm. Animals don't have that. They don't shut it off. They smell it all the time. They also come in here they don't smell pizza. They smell like every chemical compound in that pizza. Like they can smell it all. So that's why we can train dogs.
There's dough, there's pizza sauce, and then they break down the dough and the pizza sauce.
Yeah, and what's in it? Because I mean, we can train drug dogs to alert to Percocets, which are I think it's you have your opiate in there, but you also have like your Tylenol in it. We can train the dogs to alert to that, but not to Tylenol. Mm-hmm. So and we proof it out. So it's like right there, it's like that's proof that the dogs can clearly distinguish the two odors, even though they're mixed together.
Yeah.
So, what can a deer smell? Like I said, we can't comprehend it. I just know it's a sense that they have that I don't want to mess with.
So I wonder, like in the states where you can have tracking dogs for deer, if obviously there's blood and different things it's coming out of the deer, but they're probably also going on the ground disturbance, right?
Yeah, I mean they can. I think it's depending on how you train that dog, but it can be anything. And even let's say you had a dog that you trained just on blood odor, where you had like a drip bottle and there was no ground, on a 10-foot pole away from you, and it was just blood odor, and that's how you train the dog. Well, as soon as you took them out on a couple live tracks and let them find a deer where there is ground disturbance, there is the fur odor or whatever other odors are on that thing.
Yeah,
they're learning. And actually that's the best thing because then they're gonna get to find the deer and they're all happy. So no matter what you want to train them on, they just picked up a bunch of stuff on their own. So. And like we've talked about this. I wish Massachusetts would, get on board with other states and allow it because, it's not like I don't think any of us that, would want to use a dog to recover a deer. It's not like we're out there like, why it's illegal is they think people are going to go run deer with dogs and try to shoot them off the dogs. It's not what us as hunters want. What we want is just like you have a wounded deer that was dead. So if we couldn't find that deer, it's dead in the woods, it's going to rot. Mm-hmm. Or you could have a legally, how they do it, like a certified dog come out and help you find it and save that meat, and I think it's respectful to the animal. I just don't
got a pretty high success rate too.
Yeah, and I just don't see in this day and age, like I know why they made it illegal back in the day because people used to run deer with dogs for gun hunting, but if you and I know a lot of the states that allow it, it's like, okay, it's a leash dog, they're tracking on like a 30-foot leash and they're not running, they're not running deer, but it's just why wouldn't the state want to allow us to find wounded deer?
Yeah. There's all kinds of weird laws that you're like, why is that even there?
Don't get us started on Sunday hunting.
Yeah, I know it. Well, I think that one is eventually gonna probably.
I hope so because you see, like I've been lucky with my career because I've had my days off are always different. So I have days off in the middle of the week, but you look at your normal Monday through Friday guy working. Yep. If he can't get out of work, he's got 2 days off.
Yeah,
a whole day's there. That you can't hunt. And then also like me as my kids are getting older, like I want to get my kids into it. They're in school, they have sports.
Yeah.
And with my schedule, how about I'm working like tomorrow? It's Saturday. I'm working.
Yeah.
How about I'm off Sunday? The only day I have off with my kids that I'd like to get them in the woods, and I can't.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It sucks. It sucks for a lot of those guys. I've just been lucky. Like we said earlier, like the more time you can spend in the woods, the more success you're going to have for sure. I used to, for years, it was I only hunted the 5 weekends in Vermont. And really, you're only hunting Saturday the full day. You hunt Sunday morning, and then you drive back.
Yeah.
So it was five Saturdays and 5 half Sundays, and that was it. But now that working from home and stuff, I can get morning sits in. I can get afternoon sits in sometimes. Not after the turn the clocks back, but you get a morning sit in and go somewhere local. And those morning sits. I mean, every deer I've killed so far has been in the morning.
Oh, really?
With a bow, yeah. I haven't killed an evening deer yet.
I think I've had more success evenings, but the last couple of years I've killed them in the morning.
I don't know what it is with me. If my spots are just, I don't know what it is, but I'm catching them coming back into their bed in the morning as opposed to leaving them.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny how like I said in the last couple of years, if you talked to me 2-3 years ago, I was barely hunting mornings because I just didn't have a lot of luck with it. And then last couple of years, days I was going out and I have success. I'm like, oh, maybe I should be going out.
A lot of guys just don't like waking up in the morning.
Yeah.
They'd rather.
Well, this time of year too, with the light change, it affects people's work schedules and when they have to be in. And,
yeah. Well, tomorrow I'll be up at 4. Got my alarm for 4:45. I've got a little bit of a drive and then a good walk in. So, but
good luck.
I'll
be stuck at work.
Well, actually, I'm getting texted stuff while we're here at that camera. So let me see. No, this camera gets triggered randomly all the time.
I did with my funny work schedule. I did have some good luck in years past because like when I was just a patrolman, like out working, I had a lot of guys that I could do like swaps with. So like this time when it changed, either I grab like, hey, you want to stay 2 hours from me in the morning, so I don't have to come in, or do you want to come in 2 hours, early so I can leave early and hunt? And then what I do is have that guy like, okay, I owe you 2 hours. We'll just hold it up, and he'd do that to me a few times until I owed him an 8-hour shift, and then I just work as a whole 8-hour shift for him. So It was good for him, and it was good for me because I was getting out on days that I was supposed to be at work.
Yep. Yeah, that's great when you can do that. You got flexibility at work. But yeah, man, that was a great podcast. We're about an hour and a half in now.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
I think we've been talking about it for like
anytime.
Yeah, a month now.
Yeah, schedules. Yeah, we'll do it anytime, and we both still have more stories to tell for this year. So
yeah, and hopefully we can get on a couple of our target bucks, and we'll have something to really talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And we get some other guys on too. Kevin does podcasts all the time too. Maybe we do a 3-way with him sometime, or, we've got a lot of the season left. And you know what? The one thing about this buck is if I don't get him with a bow, he's in this stand that I'm in. I'm realizing it's such a great muzzleloader stand.
Oh, nice.
Because you
can reach out.
Every single buck that I've seen, I could have poked with a muzzleloader so far, but only one. A spike has come right into my nice, 18-yard shooting lane. Yeah. But all the other ones I could have killed with a muzzleloader. It's like really nice.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to have a gun stand like that. Like where I hunt here, a lot of the spots I hunt are bow only. Yep. And I'm always like, I need a gun spot. And find it. And then last year I had a good one and had a deer come out. I think it was right at the first week of shotgun. It was an 8-pointer, but he looked kind of like a small body. I couldn't see him great. And by the time he got in, light was fading, and I'm like, I'm going to pass him. So I passed him. I mean, he came all the way into like 20 yards. And then I got out, and another guy that was hunting the area, I was like, oh, yeah, I saw an 8-pointer. He didn't look that great. I'm like, yeah. He was like, this day? I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, I got that deer on camera. Like, he's big. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, he's big. And it was just one of those times like played a trick on me. Yeah. I ended up seeing a picture of the deer and really was like, I shouldn't have passed that deer.
Yeah, I still haven't killed a Massachusetts deer with a gun yet. Massachusetts is weird with guns, but I applied and got all my permits and stuff, so I have guns here. But I'll only take out a muzzleloader probably. I don't even have a deer shotgun or anything like that.
Yeah, I have a good shotgun now that I like, but for years I was using my muzzleloader just because at 100 yards, I could shoot a quarter with the muzzleloader. So I was like, if you can do that, unless you're out doing drives. What do you need another shot for away?
It's nice when your target buck is in a gun huntable spot. Yeah, really. That's what I'm feeling now. So I don't feel any pressure. Like if I don't get him with a bow, I'm not feeling a ton of pressure. Although he might not even be there, but I think he is there because that's how I found the spot. Was last year during gun season. It was like mid-December, and I went into the spot. There was snow everywhere, and I followed tracks, and it brought me up into tons of beds and rubs and scrapes and stuff.
Oh, nice.
And so I know they go there in the late season anyway. So I feel pretty good. I hope I get them with a bow tomorrow, though.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Do it. Good luck.
All right, man. Thanks for coming.
Hey, bud. Thanks.
Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/Hunt Suburbia, as we'll be releasing a lot more video content this year. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow, quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow.